Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Chemistry World webinar. I'm Ben Valsler, Digital Editor of Chemistry World. We're looking at how to make a successful funding application for EU funding. There are 3 EU funding programs that we're going to look at. They've committed nearly 80 million euros of funding up until 2020. Each program offers differing combinations of business support and collaborative opportunities that enable SMEs to advance their innovative technology. So we're looking at Horizon 2020, we're looking at the SME instrument, and we're looking at Eurostars, which is a joint program with Eureka. The panel that we've got for you today is going to introduce the calls that are coming up this year and next that may be of interest to you in the chemical sciences through Horizon 2020 and the SME instrument. And we're going to look at the key lessons learned from previous calls. The EU funding system has been running for a while, and hopefully we will have learned quite a lot from the way that it's worked so far in terms of things like the deadlines that you need to look at, the differences between those strands so you know which one to apply for, the lessons that people have learned, the barriers you might face, and the particular topics that are relevant and of interest to you. So once again, if you miss any bits, do not worry, we will send around a recording afterwards and you'll be able to go through, listen, watch again and pick up any further questions. And our panellists are more than happy to answer your questions during this session. Speaking of our panellists, today we're going to speak to Suzanne Coles, who's the EU Project Manager at KTN. She obtained her MChem and PhD from the University of Southampton, where she subsequently worked as PDRA and managed several academia-industry cross-sector collaborative projects. In autumn 2014, Suzanne joined KTN to manage the company's activities and European projects and to provide support for UK companies wishing to engage in Europe. So that's Suzanne. We'll hear from her first. After Suzanne, we'll be hearing from Jane Watkins. She's the Horizon 2020 National Contact Point for SMEs and Innovate UK. Jane is part of the Innovate UK support team for the UK's Horizon 2020 funding programme. She has 10 years experience as UK National Contact Point and broad knowledge of the framework programmes. Her knowledge and experience will help UK companies and academia from the initial concept of European funding through to the proposal, pre-screening and submission. And after Jane, we'll be talking to Pascal McCluskey, who's the CEO of MOF Technologies. He brings experience in the commercialization of intellectual property, coupled with extensive academic achievements and industry experience. At Queen's University Belfast, he's been responsible for the licensing of technologies to industry and creating a number of successful spin-out companies. Thank you very much to all of our panelists for joining us, and thank you to everybody who's logged in. Now, the first person who's going to kick off is Suzanne Coles. So we're going to hand over control to Suzanne, and she can get things rolling.
So good afternoon, everybody. It's just the afternoon now. As Ben already said, my name is Suzanne Coles and I work as European Projects Manager for KTN. Now, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about KTN first, in case you don't really know us. Some of you might have heard of us before, but in case you haven't, KTN is the UK's innovation network. And our job is to link different people, whether that's businesses, entrepreneurs, academics, and funders together to enable you to develop new products, processes, and services. And our main mission is to help the economy grow through business growth, and of course to improve people's lives as well through capturing the maximum value from innovative ideas, the scientific research, and creativity. Within KTN, we have approximately 150 staff. They all have thematic expertise, and we cover the major business sectors relevant to the UK. And overall, we serve 16 different communities, and they're listed here on the slide, so materials, chemistry, through to health, ICT, transport, you name it. We have got thematic expertise in these different areas. We also run a variety of cross-cutting business programs such as sustainability and resource efficiency, access to finance as well for companies, design, international programs involving UKTI, for example, and then Horizon 2020 is another cross-cutting program. The support that we offer in Horizon 2020 to people like yourselves is to help you understand and become aware of opportunities that are applicable to you. So typically when we interact with companies in the UK, We go out there, we discuss the innovation needs of a particular company. You might have a solution that you wish to grow your business with. You might have a problem that you're seeking some kind of innovative solution for. And we come out to you, we discuss these innovation needs and gain an understanding of what it is that you need. And often we talk about finance, of course. Typically we advise on the national funding landscape, but we also get asked questions about Europe. And so where possible, we're providing information, where possible, perhaps some advice. However, we also work very closely with our national contact points. So for example, Jane on the SME instrument side, and we work with Enterprise Europe Network, EEN. You might have heard of that one as well. And between us, the NCPs, EEN and KTN, we work closely together. So if you contact one of us, we will make sure that you refer to the right contact to take you further and really help address your needs. KTN specifically, I already said we try and help you understand the opportunities that are there. We run brokerage events and promote opportunities for Horizon 2020 in collaboration with our NCPs. And we have with the partnering side, I said right at the beginning that we're bringing people together from the business side, academia, entrepreneurs, funders. If you're looking for collaborators, then we are a good port of call to help you identify suitable partners. Certainly on the national level, when it comes to the European arena, again, we can utilize these other networks and contacts that we have, the collaboration with EEN and NCPs, to help you find the right partners to make your consortium work or your proposal a reality. On the proposal development side, we're also offering some assistance in the early stages. So you might be thinking about developing a project, a European project, and that's really the right point in time to start discussing with us. In these early stages, we can help you identify the right routes or think of all the different things to keep in mind. Horizon 2020 is quite complex. It's not a myth. A lot of people say it's huge in terms of administrative burden. But we can help you navigate the maze a little bit and perhaps also clarify certain areas that just seem like a labyrinth from the outside of a newcomer to the system. And we can provide sector-specific advice, for example, on the market opportunities, the impact that your project might have, and how this could align with relevant strategies. Europe is full of lots of wonderful organizations and stakeholder networks that have developed extensive roadmaps to guide on these core topics that the European Commission publishes. And we are linked into some of these initiatives, and we can provide, again, advice on where your proposal or your project idea fits with regards to these overarching strategies, and just to help you make the proposal better, obviously. And we can also help you with the strategy development. This is looking at those sort of longer term R&D strategies where European funding might be the best source to push those forward. Now, we didn't really want to go into too much detail. I don't think there's any benefit in listing lots of different core topics at this point in time. If there is any kind of desire to have those, then I'm more than happy to follow up following the webinar individually, or perhaps you can gather some information also through your national contact points. I know that Jane will be talking a bit more about the SME instrument here. But across Horizon 2020, there's lots of opportunities for businesses, and it would take too long to list them all here. So I focused on a couple of basics. Overarching, Horizon 2020 is organized in 3 pillars. One is concerned with excellent science, and that's typically where you find money for academic research. The sort of lower technology readiness levels are focused in this pillar on excellent science. The total funding for the 7-year program of Horizon 2020 is 24.2 billion euros. Then another pillar is called industrial leadership. You can see the funding amount allocated to this over the 7-year period on the slide. And then the third pillar is something called societal challenges. And again, there's significant funding associated with this. In a way, you don't really have to worry too much about these different pillars. What's more relevant to you are the bits in orange. So where can businesses take part? Where are their calls relevant for businesses to consider? On the excellent science part, even though it's often considered as a research pillar, basic research, lower TRL scale, there's also a program in there called Future and Emerging Technologies, and businesses are definitely encouraged to participate in these. They are highly competitive, those calls, something to keep in mind. So if you are really committed, if you have an absolutely brilliant idea, you might want to consider it, but they are notoriously oversubscribed and really competitive. There's this proper excellent stuff going on in there. So you have to put up a bit of a fight, I think. On the societal challenges, so I think the topic for this, or the focus for this webinar, is more on the nanotechnologies, advanced materials, manufacturing, processing side, possibly biotechnology as well, so what is known as NMBP. NMBP in itself is a theme within the industrial leadership pillar, but there are areas within the societal challenges that also cover raw materials, for example. And those to consider there are Societal Challenge 3 and Societal Challenge 5. And I'm not going to read out the individual titles, you have them on the slides. And then the main opportunities for businesses sit within the industrial leadership pillar. Here we have got innovation in SMEs, and Jane will be talking about this further. There's also access to risk finance, and then this big program on leadership in enabling and industrial technologies, or LIGHT. Beware, there's lots of acronyms within Horizon 2020 in Europe. If you do get lost, yes, we can certainly advise and help. So don't be put off by the acronyms. It's just the way Europe seems to work. And within this leadership in enabling industrial technologies, this is where we have the NMBP work program. And I think that is probably everything I'm going to say for the moment. If there are any questions, more than happy to answer those. But that's all I wanted to say for the moment. Okay.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Speaking of questions and diving in quickly, we had a question in advance actually from Gordon Saxty at Fidelta. You have already touched upon this, talking about how oversubscribed some of these actually are. He asked how many grants there are versus the number of applications. Do you have an idea of quite how oversubscribed it is?
Well, so these different areas are different topics. They all differ in terms of their success rates. Compared with FP7, I think the success rate was in the low 20s. Jane will correct me if I'm getting this wrong. I don't have the exact figures in front of me. But Horizon 2020 overall is already lower than FP7, so it's more popular. There's more applications than there's money, even though there's huge amounts of funding associated with it. However, Horizon 2020 has only been running for a couple of years really, and really only we have got data from the 2014 calls where the evaluation is finished and contracts have been implemented. So it's still early days to give a really broad overview on how it compares with FP7, whether there's less chances now to get funding. And I wouldn't necessarily say there's less chances to get funding because of the lower success rate. It's just more competitive, and the Commission has actually realized that they're getting a lot more high quality proposals in, and they've established something called a seal of excellence. So those proposals that are above the threshold but still can't obtain funding, they're getting the seal of excellence stamp, where other sources of funding, possibly entrepreneurs or so, might then become interested to help those businesses and organizations that have this excellence to still achieve and realize their projects. In terms of actual figures, so for future and emerging technologies, the success rate at the moment is in the low, below 5%. So it's really competitive. In other areas, it's not quite as bad. It goes into double figures, but it really varies across the board.
So the seal of excellence suggests that despite it being really competitive, there are actually a lot of advantages if you apply but don't get the money. It's still actually quite a good process to have been through in order to get that badge, which you can then use to look for other sources of money elsewhere. I didn't realize they were doing that, but it seems like a very sensible process.
Yeah, so this is a really recent thing, the Seal of Excellence, that's emerged in the last few months, really. And I think the Commission is realizing that, yes, more people are applying, and there are so many excellent proposals. But unfortunately, the money doesn't really, there's not enough money. But the Commission is really trying to help this excellence take foot. And something to also note, that the shift from FP7 to Horizon 2020 is very much, well, so typically projects for businesses, they need to be up the TIL scale. So we're looking at 4 to 5, 6, 7 in terms of TIL range that you should be addressing for an industrial type project. And here you really have to think about the impact of your project. You have to think about the exploitation, and there's a lot more stress and emphasis on this. So what the Seal of Excellence also gives you is this confidence that, yeah, actually you have got a really good plan, a really good proposition, and it was not necessarily because you fell short of certain criteria or so, but it was simply because the money was not enough to go and feed everybody in that pool.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. We will come back to Suzanne later on, so if you do have any questions for her, do please put them into the questions box that we mentioned earlier on, and we will be able to get to all of your questions towards the end of the webinar. But now we're going to move on to Jane Watkins, who is the National Contact Point for SMEs at Innovate UK, referring specifically to Horizon 2020. Jane is going to take us a bit further through this process, and very soon we'll have a poll as well. So we're very keen to know not just the questions that you have, but we're also trying to gather a bit more information about you. So very soon you'll see a poll that will pop up on your screen. All we need you to do is answer the question, and then we'll move on. But now I shall hand over to Jane, and we can carry on for a little bit more.
Thank you very much, Ben. I'm here to talk about the SME instrument today, and it's new to Horizon 2020, and it is specifically for SMEs. And I have to say, it is a real encouragement and a good way of encouraging SMEs to apply for European funding. I've mapped out here just an overview of where SMEs can apply within Horizon 2020. So it isn't just the SME instrument, there's other opportunities as well. There's the societal challenges and the industrial leadership that Suzanne has mentioned. There is also Eurostars, that I will also be talking about, the SME instrument, and there's the Fast Track to Innovation, which isn't an SME measure, but SMEs can nonetheless apply. So if you want further information about any scheme here, I can talk about it or ask questions afterwards, or even over email later on. But I'll be specifically focusing on the Eurostars and SME instrument today. The SME instrument is new to Horizon 2020, and it is for for-profit SMEs only. And what's attractive about the SME instrument is you don't need to have 3 partners across 3 member states and to have a consortium of 8 or 9 partners across so many countries. You can apply as a sole applicant. It's also encouraging SMEs to be a lot closer to market, because in Framework 7 the Commission funded something called Research for SMEs, and there was a lot of good research taking part there, but not a lot of that research came to market. So what the Commissioner brought out now is something that is helping companies get much closer to market. So it's not just about the grant, the SME instrument. All you can see here, the grant is in phase 1 and 2 and 3. Phase 3, the Commission don't fund directly, it's through risk or finance or equity finance. But the SME instrument isn't just about the grant, it's about developing your business and scaling up, and helping you to do that through coaching, which is supplied by the European Commission on phase 1 and phase 2. And it's helping you to link in with the right networks and the right companies to be able to scale up. So phase 1 is a grant of €50,000. It is a lump sum. It is not a single lump sum, it is pre-financed. You get 20% up front, 40% up front, so that's €20,000 roughly. And the whole idea is to write a more detailed business plan. So the idea of phase 1 is called a concept and feasibility assessment. And because the SME instrument now is more closer to market, rather than being about the product and the research, it's now more about the business opportunity. So now the concept and feasibility is the concept and feasibility of a business opportunity that is at TRL 6 or above. So the Commission brought in these terminologies of TRL 6 and technology readiness levels. And the technology readiness level 6 implies that you must have something at prototype with working within its environment. So you have something that you know works, but you want to be able to exploit it into the European market. And to do that in phase 1, it's just a 6-month programme, €50,000. It's funded at 70%. So the total amount you have to spend is €71,429. The only outcome of phase 1 is an elaborate business plan. And at the end of phase 1, you can decide that it's no longer suitable to go to phase 2. It's not viable for whatever reason. That's fine. You don't have to go to phase 2. If you so wish to go to phase 2, you have to completely finish phase 1 first. You can't do, within the SME instrument, it's one area of Horizon 2020 where you can only apply to one proposal at a time. If you submit more than one, both will be ineligible. So phase 2, if you decide to go to phase 2, it's up to 12 days coaching, and the coaching is supplied through working with you through the European Enterprise Network. And if you are successful, you will be assigned a key account manager from the European Enterprise Network, and they will help you in terms of selecting a coach which will fit the needs on helping you to grow. So you get 12 days, and the project duration is between 12 and 24 months. And within that, really, this is about going closer to market and up the TRL levels, up to 7, 8, or even 9. You can't claim any commercial at this stage, but at this stage you can do potential prototyping or piloting. If it's in the health area, it is possible to do clinical trials, for example, and it's up to €2.5 million basically to become a lot closer to market, to get there quicker. Phase 3, the Commission don't fund directly, but by going through phase 1 and phase 2, or phase 2, is you get a quality label and it raises your profile for investors. And within phase 3, the Commission are already organising events specifically for the SME beneficiaries to engage with investors, potential investors. And we've already had a phase 2 proposal with a €10 million investment in phase 3. So the SME instrument, really best described, is like a dragon's den online. You won't be, the evaluators are not Deborah Meaden, but you certainly, the evaluators looking at your proposal very much come from an investor stroke business background. So it's all about selling your business opportunity, that you have something that is beyond state of art. The Commission don't fund incremental change. You have something that can disrupt the market at a European level. These dates just are here just to confuse me and to have to memorise them all, but the SME instrument is a rolling continuous deadline. You don't have to, the idea is you can submit at any point when you are ready as a company to apply. So there's 4 cut-offs. They call them cut-offs rather than deadlines because it's not really a deadline. So there's 4 cut-offs. So you can see that phase 1 is on the 24th of February, phase 2 is on the 3rd of February, and it's a rolling continuous call for 16 and 17. However, human nature says otherwise, and generally 80% of proposals are submitted 48 hours before the stated cut-off periods. If you just miss a deadline or the cut-off, then it will automatically not be evaluated until the next cut-off. So if you miss the 24th of February, it will then not be evaluated until the 3rd of May. Just to say as well, with the SME instrument, it is very much embedded in the societal challenges that Suzanne mentioned, and there's 1 to 2 topics within the SME instrument that are within the societal challenges. It's not a bottom-up approach anymore in that you choose the topic, like it used to be in FP4, 5, 6 and 7. There are now topics that you have to apply to. However, these topics are extremely broad in scope to help you as an SME decide what you want to do within that area. So as Suzanne mentioned, within the societal challenges, there is a topic within the NMP area, so there are topics on the nano and processing and materials and biotech calls that you can apply for, and they are all extremely broad in scope. If you have a problem in terms of where to fit within the topics, I'm happy to help you. I also work closely with the EEN, the European Enterprise Network, because they support the SMEs after funding. But what we're trying to do now is I provide a pre-screening service to proposals. We have a pre-screening deadline, which is usually a few weeks before the deadline for the deadlines from the Commission. So if you want to submit a phase 1 proposal, the next deadline to get it in for pre-screening to us is the 10th of February. However, that does not, if you miss that, it does not inflict the fact that you can't apply for a phase to the Commission deadline. So,
Suzanne, if I could jump in and interrupt you before you move on to Eureka Eurostars, I'd like to run that poll now to get a better idea of what our audience understand already about this. So hopefully the next thing you will see will be a poll popping up on your screen. I'll go through the questions and then we should see some of the answers. So far, how do you rate your knowledge of the SME instrument? If you could just let us know whether you think it's limited, fair or good. It's very useful for us and for our panelists to get an idea of the sort of knowledge people already have about these topics. And while you're filling that in, Jane, one thing that I was wondering is whether you had anything to add about the question we put to Suzanne earlier about how competitive they are in terms of number of grants versus number of applications.
The SME instrument is extremely competitive. Overall, it's got a success rate of 6%. However, the UK's got a success rate of about 14%. The UK is doing very well in phase 2. We're coming second behind Spain overall, and as of before the November deadline, we were top in the whole of Europe in terms of bringing money back from phase 2. But can I just reiterate, we get bombed down with success rates. And yes, I mean I can tell you phase 1 in terms of numbers of proposals submitted to funded. So the last call in November, they had 2,035 proposals across Europe, and only 175 were funded. However, with as you may know, some of you may know, you have to have a threshold, and it's 13 out of 15 out of 15 out of 15 out of 15. 13 out of 15. It's unlikely you'll be funded because there's more proposals than money. So you're needing more like 13.5 out of 15 to get funded. So when you break that 2,000 down, there's only about 350 that are above the threshold to be considered for funding. So 175 out of roughly 300 is a much better success rate than 175 out of 2,025. And you'll be amazed how many SMEs and companies don't read the exam questions. And there are a lot of proposals that go in there that probably shouldn't be submitted.
Thank you very much for clearing that up. Going to close this poll off now. The vast majority of people have now voted. And if I can share the results to see how it does seem that by and large people's knowledge of this so far is quite limited. I suppose that's not a huge surprise because you'd only know about it if you were applying for this particular funding already. So if you have any comment to make about your feelings about that, but also we have just had a question that is directly relevant to you from who is it? Alisahi Rayani, who wondered if you could just clarify any SME instrument submissions submitted before a cut-off time. How do they get handled? Are they only evaluated after the cut-off time?
Unmuted.
Yes. When the SME instrument first started, the Commission stated that as soon as the SME submitted the proposal, it was evaluated immediately. Okay, this is at the very start of the SME instrument. So, you know, if the deadline was in September, for example, you submitted your proposal in June, say, you'd be fed back straight away by probably in the next few weeks in July, beginning of July, before the deadline. They found out that they were breaking financial regulations doing that because some SMEs were getting an unfair advantage in the sense that they could apply twice. So what's happened now is all evaluations are closed until the deadline. So therefore, if you submit, so as I say, so if you submit on the 25th of February for a phase 1, you've missed the 24th. So it won't be then evaluated until May. It will not be evaluated immediately.
But it's certainly not the case that things that don't get evaluated are then binned.
Unmuted.
Sorry, someone has a question?
I just want to check. It's not the case that if you miss that cut-off point, you then have to start all over again. It will just go into the next session and get evaluated then.
Unmuted.
Yeah, it just goes into the next round, and you can work on your submission right up to the deadline, to the cut-off.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jane. We will let you carry on from here.
Unmuted.
I've just got to get to Eurostars. So the wonderful world of Eureka Eurostars. First of all, I'm not the contact point for Eurostars. It is Graham Mobbs from Innovate UK. I'm happy to do this presentation. If you have any queries specifically about Eurostars, I'm quite happy to put you in touch with Graham. So, I mean, Eurostars, it's one of the first European funding that's dedicated for R&D, for research performing SMEs. And the good news is it is a very short lead time, which is unusual with European funding. It's 14 weeks from cut-off date to a funding decision. So that is actually quite quick. The projects are funded by the respective partners, so it's partly funded by the Commission, and the respective national partner in the UK is Innovate UK. In order to take part in the Eureka Eurostars, you have to take part as a country, as a member, so that these countries are members of the Eurostars. So these are the Eurostars countries who are eligible to apply. And you can see that South Korea isn't European, and Turkey is an associated state, but these are the countries that have signed up to Eurostars, so that they're putting the pot of money, so they're eligible to apply. So you can only partner with companies from within these countries named here. Because the rules are, if you want to talk about partners and who to partner with and which country is it best to partner with, I would suggest you have a talk with Graham Mobbs. There's two eligible criteria here. There's Eurostars in terms of the Commission, and the criteria here, they must have a consortium leader, and the consortium leader must be the R&D performing SME. You must have at least 2 partners from 2 different Eurostars participating countries. And I wouldn't recommend you going much more on large consortia in Eurostars, because each national body has its own set of rules. The more partners you have in there, the more complicated it can get. The duration is no more than 36 months, and your introduction to market is foreseen within 2 years after the project ends. And the research performing SME must undertake a minimum of the 50% of the R&D cost, but no single country or partner is responsible for more than 75% of the total project costs. Eurostars is a completely bottom-up area, so there's no thematic areas or societal challenges like there is within the SME instrument. It's completely bottom up, so you decide what you want to do, of course with the exception of military. And just to stress that the partners in a consortium must be a separate legal entity and not linked entities. These are the rules in terms of UK partner eligibility set out by Innovate UK through Graham Mobbs. And in the UK, Eurostars, they only fund SMEs. So large companies or universities are more than welcome to participate in Eurostar project, but they must source alternative funding. And the rules are that the SME must be trading for at least 12 months and VAT registered, must have revenue generation from commercial operations or investment and grant funding at the time of the application. Any subcontracting within the any subcontracting within Eurostars must not exceed 20%, and projects must be managed by the research performing SME, so management cannot be subcontracted. The maximum funding level is 60% of all eligible costs, and it's up to €360,000. So the maximum is 360,000 per partner. So if you want to talk who to partner with, please speak to Graham. I can send on his details. In fact, I can send it to the organisers, so if anybody's got questions, they can email Graham direct. And the next deadline is the 18th of February, and the next cut-off for STEAM is going to be second semester of 2016. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. We are getting quite a few questions through. I'll just have a look at the ones specifically related to the SME instruments. We've had a question from Carol Austin who asks how long it takes to get a decision after that cut-off period.
Unmuted.
So phase one, you will know whether you're funded or not within 5 to 6 weeks. Phase two takes a little bit longer. It's usually 2 weeks after that. So we're probably 8 weeks. If you're asking the time to grant, time to actually start the project, the time to project is for phase one is 92 days, 93 days, and the time to project for phase two is 170 days.
So they're obviously quite variable, but they are reasonably comfortable periods. You're not going to be sat there waiting for years in order to find out while they review other things. You will get your answer relatively quickly. Well, thank you very much, Jane. We're going to move on to Pascal in just a second, but first I'd like to run our second poll of the webinar. So this is just to give an idea of the sort of level of engagement that we're actually getting here and how many of you are actually planning on submitting an EU funding application on behalf of the company that you work for. And I'll give it a couple of minutes to work through. As I said, we'll hand over to Pascal in just a second. And I'll give you a few more minutes to let some of these come in. Thank you very much for all of your questions that have come in. And I'd like to apologise as well for some of the echo that we've been getting on the line. You may or may not have heard that. It depends on your setup. We're doing our best to minimise it here. So I apologise if that has affected your enjoyment of the webinar so far. There are very good questions still coming in, but we do still have plenty of time. So if there is anything you'd like to know, do please put it into the questions box now. But as everybody has said so far, they're happy to take questions afterwards. If you send us your questions, we will happily send them on to the panelists and they will get back to you if they're able to answer. I think that's probably enough time for you to answer this question. So we're going to close the poll and display it. It seems that there's a relatively even split between people who know for a fact that they are going to make a funding application and those who aren't sure. I hope this webinar will help to answer some of the questions for you that will turn that not sure into a definite yes or a definite no. And so at that point we're going to hand over to Pascal. So we will need to share his screen and he can pick up from the presentation. Still plenty of time for those questions. Do please get them in. Pascal, once again, thank you ever so much for joining us, and I'll let you pick up from as soon as you get control of the screen. We should see your slides, which we haven't done yet, so I will just keep reminding people of the fact that they can put in questions. Someone to Vu has just asked if there'll be an electronic version of the presentation available. I'm not sure if we can make the slides available, but what we certainly can do is make a video of this webinar available, so you'll be able to see all of the slides within that, and that will be available a short while after the webinar itself has concluded. So it seems that we've got Pascal back online. Pascal, thank you once again for joining us. We will hand over to you here.
Hi Ben. Thanks for the introduction there, and hello to everyone listening. As Ben has said, my name is Pascal McCloskey. I'm the Chief Executive of a company called Moff Technologies. We have had varying degrees of success in applications to Horizon 2020, and so I've been asked to present some of our findings. Well, firstly, Moff Technologies, we're a company based in Belfast. We're a spin-out from Queen's University in Belfast, from the chemistry department here, and what we do is we manufacture a relatively new class of materials called metal organic frameworks. So these are nanomaterials which have a wide range of applications in gas storage and gas filtration and industrial processes. Our key innovation is that we have developed a patent-protected process which is granted around the world, which allows us to manufacture these materials which had previously been very expensive and very difficult to manufacture, and we can produce and synthesize them in a way which, for our process, is a lot cheaper. It's environmentally very friendly because we don't use solvents. It's a very fast process. It's quite simple, and it's completely scalable for large-scale industrial opportunities. So it makes it commercially a lot more feasible to use these materials in a range of different applications. So currently where we are as a company, we can commercially supply in significant kilogram quantities a wide range of these, a panel of these different types of materials, and we are developing commercial collaborations with companies such as General Motors, IBM, Solar Energy, Johnson Matthey, and I can go on, who are using these materials for developing new applications in gas storage and application areas. So really the three core areas for MOFs to be utilized in is the gas storage. So we can make storage of gases such as natural gas much more efficient, so that we no longer would need to have a large tank taking up the whole boot of a car. Allow it to store gases a lot safer because you don't need to use the same sort of pressure as you would under compressed conditions. So they're very attractive from the point of view of being able to store a range of different hazardous gases such as acetylene. The second sort of main technology tranche is really they can selectively filter out different types of gases. So there's a whole range of industrial processes such as carbon capture and sequestration, natural gas processing and hydrocarbon separations where these materials have utility. And finally, the main, final third main area of product opportunity here is that these materials have very high surface areas. So they actually are, the closest analogy I can give to them is that they would be like a sponge for gases, and they have very high internal surface areas. They also have very high thermal stabilities, so they can potentially be used as heat pumps. And so our current relationship with IBM is around developing a new system to manage the temperature control within cloud data centers, and that can potentially spill over into making more efficient industrial cooling systems. Hello?
Hello again, Pascal. I asked that poll a little bit early, just while we were transferring across, so we can just carry on with your presentation onwards from that. MOFs are something that Chemistry World talk about a great deal. Actually, they turn up that because they are still very much an active area of research, so it's very interesting to hear the sorts of ways that they're being applied, as well as what we hear about at Chemistry World. So often it is the research papers showing the potential new structures and the potential for them. It's nice to hear from an organisation who is now actually really realising that potential. But I'll let you carry on from your next slide after the poll.
Okay. Do you want me to continue on now, Ben?
Please do, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, just on your point now, I suppose there are a lot of people working on these materials, so and the main reasons why there's so many people working on them not being commercialised is the whole area that we're addressing is that these materials are very difficult and very expensive to manufacture. So that has really been the rate limiting factor in terms of these translating from a very exciting academic research potential into a commercial opportunity, and that's the bridge that we're trying to make, and we are making at this stage. So to give you an example, 3 to 4 years ago there was only 2 MOFs available in small gram quantities, which would have cost you the equivalent of £10,000 or more per kilogram. Now we are able to make, we're moving towards hundreds of kilograms scalability for the manufacturing of these materials, and with that economies of scale and with our improved manufacturing processes, we're getting significant reductions in the pricing of these types of materials. So we currently make about 10 now, and we are continuing to expand the panel that we are making available. So so in terms of MOF Technologies and our experience of Horizon 2020, we have submitted numerous applications from both the general tranche on the consortium bids, and we've also submitted an SME application. We've been successful in one of our consortium bids, and that project started last November. And for the SME application, we submitted in March last year. I think it was March or April last year. We received a score of 13.4 out of 15. So we passed the threshold for funding, but we didn't actually receive the funding. We were informally told we were eight in the list, and only the top 5 applications got funded. So it gives you an indication of how difficult and competitive these funding schemes are. We have resubmitted that SME application there on just the 25th of November. So hopefully we should be hearing from that towards the end of February, start of March. So I suppose the key thing for us as a small company, we only have 7 employees at the moment. It's really about identifying the appropriate call. We continually get invited to participate in consortium bids. Because of the time and effort and resources required to commit to writing a very sort of comprehensive proposal, which you feel have got some merit and feels some degree of potential funding opportunity, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. So it's not really worth focusing on calls which aren't really out of your core activities, I don't think, particularly for SMEs or for companies such as our sizes. But one of the key things is having a well-established network of both research and commercial partners. For both the consortium and SME applications, for our SME application, we actually have 2. There's ourselves and another SME which are applying to it. So you can actually, I think you can actually be 3 partners that apply an SME application. So we are the single largest partner, but we also felt it makes a stronger proposition to have another commercial partner on board. But you really do need to establish those networks so that you can understand where the value proposition is in each of those parties being party to the application process. And in that aspect, I think key thing is trying to partner with those with previous experience of either Horizon 2020 or the previous framework projects. They give you a lot of help in the administration side, and just from the experience of dealing with the EU, which we didn't really have any prior experience of, as our company is only established in 2012. We also felt, particularly for the SME application, that we needed some external assistance to try and tailor it specifically for the European Union H2020 requirements. So we actually got some external consultants to help refine the process of the application drafting towards the end. We're lucky enough in Northern Ireland that we could avail of some external support through Invest Northern Ireland, who are a regional development agency here. But if you can if you can avail of some sort of grant writing support from any of your local funding bodies, and that would definitely help alleviate that. So there's a whole raft of different grant support bodies out there who can help you write these applications, and it's really about trying to identify the most appropriate one. And I suppose the key thing, which some of the previous presenters have mentioned on, is actually addressing the questions within the application, and also and having an idea of what they're actually looking for. So from the point of view of us being able to, you get a report back once you've submitted your application, and it's measured in really 3 key areas: technological excellence, technological impact, and the actual ability to implement the project. So you writing application with those 3 key prerogatives in mind would help you very much focus on what the examiners are actually looking for. So it has to be technologically, it has to be absolutely excellent. From an impact point of view, you have to very much demonstrate the commercial potential, and not just demonstrate the commercial potential, but demonstrate a large commercial potential of whatever you're looking to apply for funding for. And I think the key thing also for SMEs is that you're actually able to implement the project. So for the SME application that we have been unsuccessful in, even though we got a very high score, our excellence and impact scores were very high. They were 4.5 and 4.7, but our implementation was in the high 3s. And so the feeling that they got was that because we were such a small company and we were looking for about 2.3 million, they felt that we may not have been able to implement the project as well as what a larger company would have been. So if you're a very small company, as or like a micro company, or with only 10 to 20 employees, I think you very much have to demonstrate that you have the capabilities to implement that project. In general points, it's really don't underestimate the time required to complete the application. From all the way from just the very early stages of becoming familiar with the EU Horizon 2020 portal, through the company registration, acquiring what they call a PIC number, so everyone has an independent number which identifies you as the applicant, and also all the correspondence required. It takes a lot of time and effort, so I wouldn't underestimate from that point of view. Also, it's very handy to keep in contact with your NCPs or your national contact points, and they should be able to help.
Pascal, we seem to have briefly lost you there. I'm sure it's just a connection issue, which is always one of the problems when running webinar type conversations. If you can hear us, and if you are in fact still connected, then do please shout or wave, and hopefully we'll hear you. We'll leave your microphone live, so we will be able to hear you. In the meantime, while Pascal is returning to us, I may as well put some of these the many questions that we've had from the audience through to Suzanne and Jane, and hopefully we'll be able to get Pascal back and let him finish up fairly soon. So I think, thank you ever so much to everyone. Oh, Pascal, you're back. That's very reassuring. Unfortunately, sometimes these things happen, but we'll let you finish up, and then we'll close to some questions.
Okay, all right. I'll move on pretty quickly then. So I said, I think the key thing is don't underestimate the time required. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into these applications. Also, make sure you cost your projects correctly, all the inputs. The support's there, but you have to make sure that everything's documented correctly. And also, particularly in the consortium applications, you really do need to make sure that you protect your company position. So you may be only an SME, but like on our consortium project, we have IBM and Johnson Matthey, but you really do need to protect your position in terms of both your budget, particularly your IP, and also your discussions around the grant agreement. And also, finally, as SMEs, they may not have all the typical procedures that the Horizon 2020 may have in terms of procurement, recruitment, and record keeping. So it's very important that you have those processes and those procedures in place where you can demonstrate that you have rationale for all the decision-making processing that you have once a project is up and running. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pascal. I'm sorry that we briefly lost you there. This is always the problem when doing things live online. We've had a lot of questions. I think we will have had more than we can possibly get through at the moment. But so I'm going to start with the fairly general ones, and the more specific ones we'll send through to our panel, and they can let you know if there is any way that they can help. Let's start with a fairly general one. This one's from Kevin Hammond at D4DR Technology Partnerships. He wants to know what happens after you're awarded a grant in terms of reporting on the use of the money. Suzanne, if we could put that to you initially, and then we'll come to James and Pascal after that as well. So Suzanne, how do you report back on the use of the money?
Well, thank you very much. I should be able to answer this, having coordinated projects myself and just finished reporting on one of them as the project finished. So there's typically what the Commission calls reporting periods. So your project might last 2 years, 3 years, and these reporting periods break your project into smaller chunks. So typically you have got 3 reporting periods after the first year, then sort of halfway through sometimes, and then towards the end as well of your project. And there's an electronic system that allows you to submit all the costs. You have to report on the personnel costs incurred. You have to report on any travel or subsistence costs incurred. You also have to report on any subcontracting that you've might have engaged. You need to be able to prove all of this expenditure, so you could be subject to an audit at the end. Typically, if your funding doesn't exceed, I think it's 375,000 euros in total, then there's no compulsory audit that the Commission insists on for this project. But you could be subjected to an audit at any point in time. And actually, if the Commission gets the feeling that perhaps your finances don't quite stack up, they could instruct an audit and check your records against all the projects you have been involved in. So not just the one project that might have flagged up some peculiarities, but any projects that you've been involved in. Now, this should not deter you. Yes, it is a little bit labor intensive or a little bit administration intensive to compile all the data, but depending on how well your internal record keeping is, whether you're keeping timesheets, for example, that makes it easier to quickly assemble after a certain period what your expenditure has been. And in terms of cash flow, that is also associated here. You tend to get something that's called pre-finance, so you get a upfront payment in cash for a certain percentage of the overall allocated budget according to the proposal, and then usually there's more funds released from the Commission once you submit your first claim. And then you basically reconcile right at the end in terms of the funding that you've received and the actual claims that you have put forward.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. I'm going to move on to a question that I think is probably for Jane here. Based on the proposals that you submit, can you resubmit or redraft them after it's been initially turned down? That was a question from Jacek, whose surname I will mangle if I attempt to pronounce, so I apologise in advance for that. Yes, once you've submitted something and it's come back to you with some feedback, are you allowed to resubmit at a later time?
Muted.
Yes, you can submit as many times as you want to the SME instrument. There is no limit on the number of resubmissions. The only thing I will say is if you are not at TRL 6 and you have got way below threshold, just tweaking the proposal will not be enough to get you funded. So there is no discretion between going to phase 1 or phase 2 first. A lot of companies try to miss phase 1 and go straight into phase 2, and they're not ready for phase 2. So sometimes they submit to phase 2 unsuccessful and they actually resubmit and then going to phase 1 first.
Thank you very much, Jane. We are rapidly running out of time, but there's one question I'd like to put to Pascal, which I think reflects what you were saying towards the end there. Roger Hunt asked how many person hours are generally needed to prepare a successful application. You said you shouldn't underestimate it. What sort of time should we be budgeting?
Well, I had for the consortium. It depends. Like a lot of it really depends on how big your contribution to the project is. So, as I said, we have been successful in a consortium bid, and that bid was for around 8 million. We got 1.2 million out of that, so we're a substantial chunk of the work. So I think we have about, I think somewhere up over 90 man-months of actual time on the project. So there's a lot of commitment to it. I was easily, I mean, we started writing that application about 6 to 7 months before we submitted it as part of the consortium. So it's quite difficult to actually work out how much time we committed over those 6 to 7 months. But we had a couple of meetings for the 8 to 9 partners. So like travelled to Germany and had another meeting in Brussels before the application was even submitted. And then there's a lot of toing and froing between all the different partners as you could imagine. For the SME instrument application, which is, I suppose, it's slightly easier because it was pretty much just our project. Again, we would have started out about 5 months before we submitted it. I would have been working on that application is around 30 pages long, and I think that's the maximum you can have for an SME application anyway. So it's not something you want to be trying to address 2 to 3 weeks before the submission date. You really do need to put your plan in place, because the SME application it's a bit like writing a business plan. So there's a lot of financial figures involved. There's a lot of, you need to get all your costings involved around your timings if you're purchasing pieces of equipment, for all your consumables, particularly for the projects where you're looking to scale products or you're looking to do prototyping as well. So it's a very substantial contribution of your time over a longer period of time. So if you think of a large research council grant that you may have submitted in for a university or as part of Innovate UK, it's easily equivalent, if not greater than that. So I would have had 3 people working on our SME instrument application over a space of about 5 months.
Thank you very much, Pascal. I think we are pretty much out of time. Those of you who have submitted questions that we haven't had a chance to get to, Carol Austin, I think we've had another couple from you, Andrew Smith, Roger Hunt, so Rogers we just answered, Andy Boyce, we've got others here from Clive Smith, Neil Jones, and Hendrik Frentup. Thank you very much for all of your questions. We will put those to our panelists by email after the fact, and we will coordinate the answers and try and get those back to you when we can. So thank you ever so much to everyone who's joined us. Thank you to Suzanne, Jane and Pascal for their time today. I hope that this has helped to answer some of the questions you had about EU funding. If you are interested in the other webinars that we have coming up, then I can exclusively announce, because we haven't announced this publicly yet, that we will have another webinar on the 9th of March all about how to get the most out of social media for small businesses. So this will hopefully let you know where you should be tweeting, who you should be tweeting to, and what you should do with your Facebook, Instagram, and all of those other accounts that we all feel obliged to have these days, and how you can make it work best for your business. So thank you very much once again. We will send around a link to the recording of this webinar after the fact. You'll be able to go back and see and hear all of the things that we've just been through in the last hour. I'm Ben Valsler, Digital Editor for Chemistry World. Thanks again for joining us.